Captain Midnight.
Almost 20 years ago, in November of 2006, The Office aired Season 3, Episode 8, The Merger. As the name would suggest, it followed the merging of the Stamford branch of Dunder Mifflin into the Scranton branch and the clashes and conflicts that mostly came from Michael trying to impress his new employees. Like most of Season 3, it's an incredibly solid, funny, and well-paced episode of television. But to me, there's a bittersweet quality to it as well, because in so many ways, it's the episode where the early, more grounded era of The Office truly ends, and a version of the show built to last many, many more seasons would really emerge, bringing new characters to Scranton, new romantic conflicts, and laying the foundation of a slightly more cartoonish tone. I want to go over all of that this week. The good, the bad, and why ultimately, I do really enjoy this episode. Before we get there, whether you've been watching for 8 years, this is your first time here, or somewhere in between, thanks for sticking around. If you haven't subscribed yet, now could be the time.
I am in my office. I just wanted to check in and see how everybody's doing.
So I know I have some viewers who really enjoy when I revisit old sitcom episodes, and some that just find it baffling that I want to still talk about this stuff. But I think for me, it's fascinating to look back on these episodes with the benefit of hindsight and knowing where these shows would end up going. So before I get into the episode proper, I should probably talk about the Stamford branch a bit, because it's so central to the rest of what's going on here. Jim leaving his job after the season 2 finale was an interesting shakeup in a lot of ways. It was kind of a brave move for a sitcom protagonist, because rather than hitting the reset button, it really changed the show for a while, introducing an entirely new office with different dynamics and supporting characters. It made sense for Jim's story and gave season 3 a very different vibe, at least for a little bit, as the show divided its focus between Scranton and Stamford in those early episodes. It expanded the show's scope for a while, but in retrospect, it's clear that it was never built to last. Unlike the Michael Scott Paper Company, which I do genuinely feel like they could have gotten seasons of stories out of, the Stamford branch always felt very small. Just a few characters, not much in the way of a supporting cast. Clearly, this was always intended to bring Karen and Andy into the fold, more than function as a new location that the show would check out in the long term. Even if it does manage to remind me of the very underrated pre-Modern Warfare era of Call of Duty every time I watch it. But yeah, since this branch mainly resulted in those two characters, I feel like we should talk about Andy. I don't think I've made a big secret of this guy not being a favorite character of mine in a lot of my Office videos. I keep meaning to do a whole video just on him, but instead I've mostly settled for taking a lot of swipes at him, especially in my videos on later season stuff. Here's the thing though, I think Andy works great in this era of the show. Honestly, going back to this one, it reminded me why the character had gained so much traction in the first place. This is Ed Helms doing what Ed Helms does best, playing a certain type of weaselly, endlessly faux confident guy. And I mean that in a good way. Now, in the Stamford office, he was really set up to be the equivalent Dwight figure. Obnoxious, arrogant, power-hungry, and a complete kiss-ass to the boss. I actually think it's a real credit to the show that they were able to create another completely believable version of that archetype, which also managed to be extremely distinct from Gareth, the Dwight of the original UK show. Clearly, the writers just had a talent for crafting these unbearable coworker characters. For me though, a little of them has always gone a long way. And to be fair, the Andy and Dwight material here is a highlight of the episode. Andy doesn't just want to fit in, he wants to dominate Scranton's office hierarchy. I think the show would eventually start going to this well far too often, but it works here in large part because it's just funny for Dwight to finally have someone who cares about these pointless and useless titles as much as he does, as well as someone who is totally willing to embarrass himself for Michael's approval. I really love his introduction to Michael, where he just mirrors his boss's words as much as he can. And of course it works like a charm on Michael, who I think even early on can tell there's something off about Andy, but is just psyched to have someone as over-the-top enthusiastic as he is. Speaking of Michael, while the added cast members are definitely the most important aspect of the episode, it should be noted just how much great material Steve Carell gets in the merger. For one thing, this is the episode with Michael and Dwight's Lazy Scranton training video, and Michael's Blair Witch Project parody. I really love that scene, but I'm also super interested in how this plays for younger, or I guess non-American viewers. Lazy Scranton was Michael's attempt to recreate Lazy Sunday, an early SNL digital short and one of the earliest viral videos that I remember seeing as like a 12-year-old. It was just everywhere in 2006, and I have zero idea if it has any staying power at all, or if people just watch this now and think Michael and Dwight, I don't know, made a funny music video. Either way, I definitely still enjoy Lazy Scranton. Also, the flashback to the Blair Witch training video reveals that Jim was probably hired in the 90s, which I think makes sense with the timeline of the show, but man, that really reminds me The Office is getting up there. Before I consider my mortality too much though, I want to talk about Tony. Like, you remember Tony, this guy. You may not think Tony was very important, and, to the show overall, yeah, he's not really. But man, I think Tony is not only a high point of the merger, but really symbolic of what would change going forward. Tony Gardner kind of feels like a character from The Office UK. He's normal, mild-mannered, admires Toby for his helpful professionalism, and, of course, just cannot exist in Dunder Mifflin Scranton for very long. I really value characters like this, totally average people who react to Michael like regular people at work would, and I feel like they become increasingly uncommon over the years, as the show itself leaned more and more into its comfortable sitcom rhythms. Tony, who, if you don't remember, Dwight and Michael try to lift up onto a table, feels like a holdover from season 1. A reminder of what this all looks like to someone who doesn't feel like you walked out of a TV show. Now, that's not to say that, Karen is over-the-top comedic or anything, but the main thrust of her story is the very TV-feeling love triangle. Old Tony doesn't get anything like that. Speaking of that stuff, I think the merger represents the show when the Jim and Pam material was really still clicking. This is quietly a very, very good episode for Jenna Fischer. We see Pam as she realizes that the fantasy she's built up, of her and Jim picking up more or less from where they left off, just is not going to play out like that. Not now, maybe not ever. Karen is here, and at least at this point, the show is not undercutting her to make Pam look better. It's really easy to root for her and Jim as well, giving the whole love triangle kind of a sad undertone, where it feels like maybe the pair just missed each other, a melancholy mood that The Office, at its best, could always pull off. The show wrings a few episodes out of this tension, maybe too many, depending on who you ask, but here it just functions so well as a subplot. Like many great Office episodes, the core of the merger is Michael being a bottomless well of insecurity, his need to be seen as a fun boss to all of his new employees, and of course, becoming unbearable and more than a little petty towards them in the process. Now, Steve Carell is the backbone of the show, but I think season 3 is where you really start to see the supporting characters get more and more airtime. I really like little moments here, like Jim asking Toby if fist bumps are his new thing, only for Toby to immediately get really self-conscious about it, or Phyllis turning on Karen for not knowing who Scranton King Bob Vance is. It makes a lot of sense that they'd want to expand the scope of the show beyond Michael and the Jim and Pam drama more and more. But I think there's a flip side to that as well. While the Dwight and Andy material in this episode does hold up, eventually those kinds of stories would come to dominate the show more and more. As the characters became more cartoonish and the world of The Office became more insular, these kind of hijinks came to be the show's bread and butter, not just fun subplots every once in a while. I love the merger. I really do. I can throw it on anytime. But when looking at it critically, I can't help but see the seeds being sown of the show The Office would eventually become here, for better and for worse.
So, it's been a crazy few months for online privacy, which makes a lot of sense to be worried about. At home, at work, or using public Wi-Fi, your personal data is always at risk.
That's why I want to recommend Private Internet Access, the world's most transparent VPN provider with over 30 million downloads.
PIA creates a secure encrypted tunnel for your internet activity, hiding your real address and protecting your sensitive information from hackers, ISPs, and even government censors. What I love about PIA is its unbeatable convenience. With a single subscription, you can protect unlimited devices. Phones, laptops, tablets, more at the same time. Plus, it just works seamlessly across all major platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, even Linux. If you're looking for more to watch, PIA lets you unblock region-restricted content on your favorite streaming services, so you can access shows and movies from all over the world. Really, using Netflix without PIA is like buying some massive complete TV series box set and only getting the first season of the show inside. Plus, PIA has a strict no logs policy, meaning your data stays truly private. Use my link to get an incredible 83% discount on private internet access for just $2.03 a month, and 4 extra months free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support, so there's really no risk in trying. Stay private, stay protected. Go to piavpn.com/captainmidnight down in that description or pinned comment below.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.